Es una comunidad hermosa. Vean a sus alrededores, con unos cerros hermosos. Además, tanta gente de a caballo, qué hermoso se ve. Esto nos hace recordar a nuestro querido decir a nuestro querido México.
I grew up in the city of Pomona, California. I lived there for about 27 years of my life. I would say I wasn't really involved in environmental issues in my community. My brother, Eddie, had grown up with asthma, and in my home, I just thought that that was something that you are just born with, kind of like an allergy. It seems, as a kid, you go out and you see blue skies and you think everything's great. We have the ocean, we have our mountains, and the doctor would always say, go up to the mountains, it's better up there. It wasn't until college that we started to dig more into these issues, that I started to understand like who the Air Quality Management District, who CARB was, and then why is our air this bad? Because you do hear a lot in politics that the air is better today than it was in 1970. And so I got curious and started looking at pictures of what 1970 in California, Southern California looked like. And yeah, you would see a black layer of smog, which is not there anymore, which makes people think that the air quality is in good shape. What got cleaned up because of the catalytic conversion in vehicles cleaned up that soot in the air, but we got left with a lot of particulate matter, which is like, they call it like the invisible killer. And then with my own son's health, that's what made me just say, this is really bad. He started with a really bad cough, and doctors said he must have RSV, but it should be gone in a couple of days. And then it went into weeks, and I was like, this cough, and he was about 6 months old. And it was a persisting, kind of like a really bad cold that wasn't going away. And it wasn't until maybe like a month later, the doctor's like, I'm just diagnosing your son with asthma. It was about 5 months of still periodic doctor visits that the doctor said there's just really no anything that's going to make him better until the environment gets better.
My son could not breathe without the assistance of an oxygen tank. And I felt like a failure, like an absolute failure. So we took him to every doctor, we took him to every intervention, and long story short, 3 years later, they finally said, have you considered the impacts of the environment on your son? And then they explained to me about the air quality in the Inland Empire. They told me that where I lived had the worst air quality in the entire nation. I was like, no, it's really nice where I live. It's beautiful, I can see the mountains, everything's fine. What we're trying to say is there is something in the air that had it had color, had it been blue or pink or purple, things would have changed.
I started to be concerned about the air quality when it was right around COVID, and we started talking about, breathing complications and all this stuff. And the more community residents would go on there and talk, they would talk about their children and their children having asthma problems and their children, not being able to breathe, and their children even having their pillows be soaked in blood because of how basically how poisonous the air is.
When we talk about politics, we always think of it on a national scale, right? We automatically know who the President of the United States, but very seldomly do we know who our own mayor is or who represents us on the city council. And so little do we know that those local officials actually hold so much power over the jurisdiction of where we live, and how their decisions really do make an impact day to day in our lives. But I'm here because this community matters to me, and I'm trying to raise my children here too, and I need it to be in the best possible condition that it can be. And that's why I fight. I fight for my kids, I fight for my family. Right around us at this Kaiser High School, there is so many warehouses, and what those warehouses do is they attract trucks, and those trucks that come here, they're running on diesel gasoline, and so when that diesel combusts in the engine, it emits GM 2.5, and it has a span width of 1,000 feet. So if you have a school that's only 300 feet away, those children are going to breathe in that air, and it's toxic to them because children have a faster heart rate and a faster respiratory rate. So that means that they're inhaling it 10 times faster than we are.
A movement is something that grows slowly but surely. And so the goal is not to have an entire room packed every single time, but if you can grow it by just one person. And so that is the hope, that if we just increment it by just one person, we're slowly but surely gaining that momentum. And the hope is that eventually, with enough time and enough communication, we will get a room full of, 800 people, how they said here.
This is like a slow death. It's okay to let the things happen because we're not dying by the day. We're just dying a very slow death.